Hello and welcome to week 10, in which we're going to start the final project, or P4, of the semester. The final project is a collaborative report, and that means group work for the rest of the semester. Group work. This doesn't mean every single thing needs to be turned in with your group, but there are some fundamental things where you should talk things out with your group, and there are 4-ish assignments where if it's not turned in and completed by the group, then it won't be great in terms of a group grade. But we'll get to all of that as we review week 10, and let's start with understanding concepts. So there's readings there for you and a reminder about this week. And I'm going to give you a sneak peek of what the end goal of Project 4 is all about. Project 4 is I assign some groups that you'll find in the People tab. You've seen me do this before for the research project groups, the group exercises, but now you'll find your Project 4 groups here where it says project groups. Right now it's empty, but when you do see them populated and you find your name, you will also find, and I showed this in one of the other videos, but you will also find the group leader. I will already have chosen that as well. And you'll see that when you see a little icon leader next to someone's name in your specific group. This means that person's research summary, I really liked their topic. They're the group leader, and the topic of their research summary is the problem for the group. There's no changing topics at that point. There's no saying, well, Javier's research summary was a little better, so let's do his topic or whatever. Maria is the project leader, and Maria's topic is what needs solving. For an example. But so you find your group, you guys hold weekly meetings, or you collaborate on Google Docs or Google or text or whatever. And eventually you'll get to this. And in all group assignments you submit, you will also have a checklist at the top. So I know who contributed. And if this was blank, I would know someone didn't contribute, and that's important for me for grading and for plagiarism. So the first part of the report is a business letter in which you're detailing what you're about to present, and your link should be included in that letter. And if I click that link, it will show us an example of the project. So you have an assigned problem, depending on whoever is your leader of the group and what their research summary is about. And Project 4 is how, as a group, can we solve this actionable and probably localized problem? And you're going to move through that in these steps. You'll have an abstract, an introduction. Someone will have to find a map of that area and get a screen grab of it or whatever. Someone has to put together a video, sort of like an elevator pitch of your problem. It's brief. And then in a text-based section, what is the problem? These are parts that you can kind of borrow from the research summary. And then what is your solution, but in a more detailed fashion? How would you then implement that solution? On what kind of schedule would you do part 1, 2, 3, 4, however many parts you think you need to implement your solution? What would that budget look like? Because you've researched budgets for similar situations. And what is your conclusion? What's your call to action to get the audience involved And the audience for this entire project is you pretending that you still have your professional hat on. You work for a company or a nonprofit or a professional advocacy group or something. They've hired you as this group to solve this problem and pitch the solution to them. And it's more like a moving web page that you're scrolling through. This isn't a PowerPoint. And you still have headers. There is text. There are in-text citations. You do have to show the audience the specific area you're talking about. And sometimes you can find these area maps really easily online, or sometimes you can find it on, you take a screenshot on Google and you kind of draw around where you're talking about. And I'm sorry about my 5-year-old in the background, but you know, we'll move through it. You add captions to all your figures. Someone in your group that feels more tech savvy than everyone else will have to create, what is it, like 2 minutes, maybe 1 minute or less video that highlights your problem, kind of moves through it, almost like an advertisement for, this is the problem and this is kind of how we could fix it. And then you move through the problem and you include some visuals. And then what could be your solution? And how would you implement it? You need a visual to also describe that, and then text to back it up. You need a budget, but you also need text to back up why this budget would work, why it wouldn't. The budget needs to be created by you and your group. It can be based off of something you saw, but everything in the report needs to be created by you, unless it's like a stock image that you use for decoration, whatever. Does it work cited? So that is what project 4 at the very end. This is a final draft. This is at the very end what it should look like. Even rough draft stage kind of look like this, but maybe missing, you know, the headers aren't all correct or something, but that's what we're getting to from week 10 to 15. It's a big undertaking, but every week we will chip away and do a different part of it. Maybe we'll focus on the abstract 1 week. I know that's part of 1 week. Another week we'll work on building the introduction together. So we're going to take it in parts so that you don't feel so overwhelmed. And I know that you can do it. So once again, we're taking problems that we already had from project 3. And now you're assigned to a group, and your group has to understand that topic, look at past solutions for similar problems, and you're pitching that solution in a presentation. You should have a, hold on. Okay, hopefully now it will be darn quieter. And so, for example, say Alejandra, she wrote her research summary about lack of educational funding in a particular school district in Florida. And she was assigned as the project leader. Both her topic and for whatever reason, she was chosen and her topic was chosen. She has a group of 3 or 4 other people. She has this background knowledge. She has the possible solution or a hint of it, but she is meeting with her group weekly to decide on, is this a viable solution, or we, as a group, we have researched other solutions and what else could we do? The work that she's done in this research summary can be applied to the ultimate presentation, as I mentioned before. So when you're talking about, you know, even stuff from the intro, you can borrow some of that from the research summary and maybe beef it up a little bit stuff from the problem area. Maybe that's from your, here's the problem, causes of the problem section. And then the other stuff that the newer stuff, proposed solution, implementation, budget, conclusion, you're gonna have to write that stuff from scratch, but you can do it, and you have a start with your project leader's research summary, which at your first meeting or even before it, they're going to email that to you. Or because we've done peer review, you can just find it yourself in the forum and review it to kind of be prepared for an overview of the topic and kind of maybe a hint of a solution, because they should have put that in the conclusion in a perfect world. I'm going to review these links because while I know, and I've done it too, I was a student, I know assigned readings are kind of bullshit and they're boring. You can skip them. I would never know, and it might not even affect the work that you do for week 10 and moving forward. What will really affect your work, and I'll know it and your team will know it, is if you skip out on links like this, where I say, hey, here's some helpful stuff to understand the final project. You never read this shit. I will know, and your teammates will know. And the work that you put forth, I will understand why you didn't do a good job. I'll know right away. To avoid that, you should click on this stuff so you better understand not just the purpose of the project, which I've explained, but the team participation part, which really a lot of people get anxiety about, and I understand that. But that's why I've scaffolded this project to have weekly individual assignments like you're used to, turning in stuff by yourself and being accountable for yourself, but then 1 or 2 things during that same module in which it's either a group task, everyone should contribute, or one person in the group was assigned that task, and if they don't turn it in, it's only on them, and that's fine. So that's part of this project for task list, in which it will break down the things that your group will be responsible for submitting and putting forth the work to get it done. And if there's nothing like that next to that particular assignment, that means someone in the group will need to be assigned that particular task based on group consensus, or your project leader deems it so. But if somebody doesn't, that person then doesn't turn that thing in, I don't give a shit. It's on that person. It's on Cody or Sarah or Mohammed, and they will get the 0 for these sorts of things, and it will affect their grade and nobody else's. The thing that says group grade next to it, that affects everybody. And you should always have a plan in place in case Sarah or Mohammed or whoever doesn't pull their weight, it still needs to get done. But it's a breakdown of the major and sort of minor things, the due dates, and a reminder about kind of where you turn them in. And this task list is helpful when you're meeting with your group and you're deciding, okay, this date kind of works for me. I could probably take this thing, because ideally every person in the group, there's gonna be about 4, maybe 5 people per group. Every person in the group should have 1 major and 1 minor assignment to their name. That means Cody would have these 2 things maybe. Sarah would have these 2 things maybe, and so on. Or Mohammed would have this, and then Mohammed would have that. It shouldn't be Cody's name next to everything. It shouldn't be Sarah's name for half of it and Cody's name for the other half. It should be what I recommend, which is every person has 1 major and 1 minor thing to submit from this task list, on top of the other like module exercises you yourself will be responsible for. So let me open that task list again to remind you that there's certain things to turn in together and complete together, other things where maybe one person will be assigned to that thing, but if that person doesn't turn it in, don't fret. It's only on them, and you don't need to know if they turned it in or not. Doesn't matter. But the major things, if they will be assigned to a particular person, like Cody will be in charge of turning in and putting and sewing together the parts of the team charter memo, even though everyone else is going to contribute. If Cody doesn't submit it on time, the entire group is out of that grade. Because for project 4, I do not take late submissions for hardly anything, if anything. Same thing for the recommendation report itself, this thing. If Sarah is assigned to get it all together, make sure that the group submits what they need to on the Google Doc in terms of text and all that stuff and the pictures that she can then put it together. If Sarah doesn't submit that on time, the whole group is out of that grade. For this thing, the revision planning slides, it is a major assignment, but if Cody doesn't turn it in on time, that's fine because it doesn't have group grade next to it. But it is a major assignment that should ideally be complete. But I'm getting a little ahead of things. Basically, I want you to have these sorts of things in your tool belt to be ready for project 4, and that's collaborative writing, rejection, designation of tasks, having a work plan that you start by using this task list. And to remember that you're not going to like everybody that is on your team. They're not going to like you either. But you still need to work through it to finish what you can of the work so that it ultimately your grade is not affected. I have seen groups that one person kind of dropped out of things, or even 2 people, and they still submitted something like this. I'm sure it was really hard, but in a real life professional project situation that might happen, and no one cares about who dropped out or who couldn't do their part. They just want the work done, and that's what you need to do. So yes, I expect all the components to be done regardless of team input, but there is still being a good team member, because there's always the person, and I've said this before, the person that will submit things way ahead of time, the person that's the polar opposite of that. And they're going to push and pull at each other in your group, and you might have 2 or 3 people like that in the group. But you need to work on compromise and setting deadlines for the group that are considerate of the group, but considerate of the due dates as well. So maybe you have a Google Doc for every group assignment or thing that kind of needs group input. And at the top, you put group input due by a certain date, but you kind of remind everybody that the due date is, maybe it's the day after that or 2 days after that. I don't know. But group input due date means, you know, Sarah and Mohammed are in charge of the one part, and if that doesn't get done, then somebody else will have to pick up the slack, and we're still going to turn it in. We're still going to upload it to Canvas by that date, because maybe Cody's in charge of uploading it and he can't do it by the due date, so he needs all the parts done by blah, blah, blah date. I mean, that sucks for everybody else, but so those sorts of things are going to happen. But if you work it out ahead of time, you work out expectations ahead of time in some collaborative way, and it doesn't have to be a Zoom meeting or whatever, then things will be a lot easier. You need to re-review these 2 passages on plagiarism because they're very freaking important. And if there is someone in your team who is trying to pass off work that they did not participate in, I need to know that sort of stuff. Otherwise, don't text or email me about so-and-so is not coming to the meeting. So-and-so is not doing their abstract. I don't care. Someone else in the group's going to have to pick up their slack. As long as you have these little check marks for group assignments, that's all you need. And if it's blank for a particular person, that's all I need to for grading. Overall though, be kind to each other. I have had group assignments where people were so pissed off at somebody else that they left little notes on there for me. They left flag comments and they're like, this part was supposed to be done by Hillary, but I did it because she's so unprofessional and never respond, blah, blah. Don't do that. Don't do it. It makes you and your entire group look bad when you do that. And if you are rude during group meetings, during group chats, or on the group Google Doc, you leave little passive mean notes or like shit like that. People remember that. And later in the, at the end of the semester, you grade based on your team participation. It's a 100-point assignment in which I take into consideration things people said about you, or if, God forbid, they did exhaustively give me a headache and email me about your lack of. I take that into consideration. And you didn't turn in your certain parts of the project, or they, when I looked at the check marks, your name was always missing. Then this 100 points, that's going to be a 0 or 20 points or whatever it's going to be. So that's kind of how I account for if people are not performing the way they should in a group. And also at the end of the semester, you can evaluate each other and let me know what happened. If things got really sticky or horrible, tell me that in the self and team evaluations. Do not leave comments about each other on assignments. I wish I didn't have to say that. Okay. So we've gone over, and this, I know this video lecture is running really long, but it's a complex project. It's hard to wrap it into a 10 or even 15-minute lecture. But now that background will help you understand these two assignments better. This is an individual assignment that you turn in by yourself. It's just asking you about problem solving to get you in that mind frame of, I need to solve a problem, because you have a problem that your group leader brought up in their research memo, and it warrants solving. That's what Project 4 is all about. It's not about finding a new topic. It's not about saying in the abstract what might be done if funds are increased overall. No, what steps could be taken to fix it? You're not going through all of that, but I'm just saying you need to start thinking in the mind frame of there's an actionable problem. How could I solve it? How do you deal with problems in real life? And then before you even think of how am I going to solve that problem that my project leader brought up, I'm going to have you practice as a group solving a tiny mock scenario with this assignment. First, I want you to, there's different parts of the assignment. First, you consider your own strengths and weaknesses as a person in a group setting, in a professional setting, and these are examples. And maybe it's not something that's really tangible. Maybe it's like, I'm really good at communicating ideas, or I'm really good at, I have really great people skills. So it might not be tangible, but maybe it's something you could still put here. So you make a list for yourself of strengths and weaknesses, and that comes up later. So that's something you should do, and it's part of this assignment and it's part of another assignment. So you need to do that. And deciding with your team, how could we get together for meetings? And then it opens up to different docs that are assigned to you and your group, because the groups will have their assigned numbers. Once you click on people, once you go to project groups, it will say project group 1, 2, 3, 4, blah, blah, blah. So then that means if you're in group 1, you would access this Google Doc, and it has ideas for meetings. Maybe you've decided that Google Doc and text chatting is the way to go, but it helps to have everyone's name and contact information in one place. And some team members even use this as their collaborative Google Doc space. Like they just insert more sheets at the bottom, or they start typing at the bottom, and they just use this. So maybe that's you and your group. Just because there's this doc, and if nobody ever uses it or fills it out, I don't care. Contacting your group is up to you. I'm never going to do it for you. I'm never going to put together a group email or a group chat for you. You, and I'm talking about the collective you, not just project leaders, need to reach out to each other. If you miss an assignment because no one ever contacted whoever, that's up to you and your group. And that sucks, but it happens. It doesn't happen too often, but it does happen about once a semester per class that I have for 3250. And it's stressful all around. I understand. So you do those two parts and you think of, can we just use a Google Doc? I'm telling you that because it's one of the more popular options, and people surprisingly, they sometimes don't think of it. And they're like, we have to host a Zoom meeting. You don't have to. And if you're gonna meet, you can decide on, do we wanna talk about this mock scenario assignment for the first part of our meeting, and then talk about the second assignment that's due, so that we are not meeting twice, if that makes sense, because there's 2 group assignments this week that need group collaboration, or that you really should have group collaboration. And I have had teams that meet for 1 hour and they knock both assignments out of the way. Or on the same Google Doc, you say mock scenario ideas. Anyway, we are focusing on the mock scenario, which is a rocking chair business. It's really silly, but it's just a way to force you guys to talk to each other and think of problem solving. And right now your problem is a shipment of wood that arrived warped. What are the next steps you as a rocking chair business should take in contacting these people to deal with this problem? You needed someone in your group needs to contact this vendor. Someone in your group needs to contact the company that supplies the chairs. Someone needs to contact the wood artisans. Someone needs to be the external communication person, your social media person, who's going to contact the customers. And then someone needs to be the internal comms person, maybe like a sort of in-house manager, because what are you going to tell the other employees overall? So this is just, it's a silly scenario and it doesn't have a lot of details. So your group can use your imagination. You can use reasonable assumptions to fill in the blanks. And then you're going to fill out this part on your own. So it helps to meet with your group, or at least collaborate on a Google Doc to say, okay, Sarah is going to reply to the vendor. Mohammed's going to reply to this person. Cody is going to reply to that person. That's all that your group needs to really consider together. If that doesn't happen, that's fine. I hope and wish you and your group would talk with each other through part 1 and 2. But ultimately, the part that needs to be turned in that is worth the 10 points is up to you as a person and you can figure it out on your own if you have to. You paste it onto your doc. You're going to answer and submit this yourself. You're going to tell me about your weaknesses. You're going to tell me who you think you are in this scenario. Are you the project leader? Even if you weren't the project leader for the research summary thing, for this mock scenario, do you imagine yourself as the leader? I don't know. Do you think you're a comms executive, an artisan contact? Who would you call yourself for the mock assignment? And then who are you writing to? That list of individuals, who did you end up choosing to reply to? Because ultimately the assignment is an outline of, I'm gonna reply in a memo and I'm gonna have a few ideas in this memo about how I would go about fixing this situation in terms of who I have to reply to. The vendor would be interested in certain things. The company that is ordering the chairs from us is going to be wondering when are my chairs going to arrive, or that sort of thing. So, and depending on if you're applying to the vendor or the company that your client effectively, would a memo be the right thing? Or maybe a business letter would be better. An email is sufficient because you're the internal comms person and you can just send everybody or something. So I need to know your bare bones. It doesn't actually have to be the full email, memo, or letter. It can be an outline format. And then I need to know if it's a memo, how are you getting it to your people? In a meeting? Well, that's what number 5 is about. Let's see what my dog is doing. Hang on, guys. Once you've answered all that, you hit reply on the forum. You're not worried about APA or MLA. I don't give a shit about that for this. Show your answers. That's it. Show the answers to this mock scenario based on who you choose, who you identify as in the scenario. I'm the project leader, I'm the comms executive, and I'm going to reply with a memo to the vendor or to the wood artisans. You're choosing one of these, and you're choosing your role and you're choosing the audience, and then you're submitting an outline response and the genre and the method, or the genre and the medium. So that is due March 19th, and there's no late submissions for this. That is all for the first part of week 10, and that was already a lot. So reach out with any questions. I prefer you reach out after reading everything that you can read from the module.